But we begin this hour with the full court press by the Justice Department to try to push the focus in Minneapolis on anything and anyone other than ICE and the officer involved in the shooting death of Renee Good. That includes Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who are both now under federal criminal investigations by the DOJ for allegedly obstructing federal immigration enforcement, according to two sources familiar with the matter. That investigation is being run out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minneapolis, where there's been a strong pushback to the DOJ's handling of this case. The New York Times reports that 6 federal prosecutors in Minnesota resigned on Tuesday over the DOJ's push to investigate Good's widow and the department's reluctance to investigate the shooter, according to people with knowledge of their decision. Also in their list of grievances was the DOJ's refusal to include state officials in investigating whether the shooting itself was lawful. And those weren't the only DOJ resignations this week due to the agency's handling of the ICE shooting. At least 6 top leaders of the criminal section of the Civil Rights Division have resigned in protest over the decision to not investigate the ICE officer's fatal shooting of Good. It represents the most significant mass resignation at the DOJ in nearly a year. Joining us now is Timothy Hafey, former lead investigator for the House January 6th Select Committee, and David Harbach, former assistant special counsel in the Office of Special Counsel Jack Smith. Both of them are founding partners of the new law firm, along with Jack Smith, Hafey, Smith, Harbach, and Wyndham. Thanks to you both for joining us this morning. I want to start with the news out of Minneapolis. Tim, what's your reaction to the fact that Governor Walz and Mayor Frey are now under investigation by the DOJ for what is alleged as criminal interference in law enforcement work based on public statements disparaging the surge of officers and federal agents?
Yeah, hi, Jackie. Good morning. Look, you know what I'm really struck by is the juxtaposition of this and the lack of investigation of the shooting, right? It just demonstrates that decisions are not being made any longer at the department based on facts and law, but are rather being guided by politics. It's shocking that you can have a police-involved shooting, the death of a citizen of Minnesota, without any investigation ensuing. And you can have an initiation of an investigation of politicians who are simply doing their job and criticizing heavy-handed tactics by ICE, right? The historic tradition of the department in which Dave and I served is decisions are being made based on an honest and objective assessment of facts and law. And that tradition is unfortunately now stained, is not being followed by the people in charge. It's hugely discouraging for people like me who grew up in the department.
David, I want to bring up something that Ankush Khardori said in our 7 o'clock hour when talking about this federal investigation of the governor and the Minneapolis mayor. And he raised the question about whether in order for there to be an indictment, a grand jury would have to hand one down or hand one up. I don't know the exact legal way you guys talk about this, but what is the likelihood, do you think, given what we have seen on the ground since the killing of Renee Nicole Good, that a Minnesota grand jury or a grand jury, federal grand jury there in Minnesota would actually indict the sitting governor and the sitting mayor of Minneapolis?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Good morning. A couple of things in response to that. First, of course, yes, in order for anyone to be indicted for a felony count, a grand jury would have to return an indictment. Handing up or handing down, I've heard both, actually, candidly.
Okay.
But I don't know a whole lot about the facts of the case, certainly not enough facts of the case in order to make a prediction about what any grand jury might do. But I will echo something that my partner Tim just said a minute ago. What I do know is what it means to be a career prosecutor in the Department of Justice. And what it means is that you don't take politics into account in the decisions that you make. I've worked at multiple U.S. attorneys' offices. I've worked at the public integrity section, where frequently we have public officials who are under investigation for one thing or another. And never in any of the offices that I've worked at did my colleagues and I talk about politics. We didn't talk about who you voted for. We didn't talk about who you think should win the election. It was off limits. And that is part and parcel of what it means to be a career prosecutor in the department. And so when we see career prosecutors leaving the department without fanfare and without a lot of public commentary, but just leaving their posts, these are people who have spent a lot of their career working very hard for fair and impartial justice to be administered, and that they are leaving is very troubling. It's very troubling to me, and I think anyone who's ever served at the department.
I want to look at, to your point, David, the Reuters analysis. This is from December 17th of Justice Department attorneys leaving. So from January through November of 2025, public records show the department has lost more than 2,900 attorneys. That is triple the number of those who left in each of the previous 4 years. And I am not surprised that many people have left when you listen to Attorney General Pam Bondi on Fox News on Wednesday and how she talks about folks who are in her ranks and when they end up resigning. Let's play that.
What happened in Minnesota? We had 6 prosecutors who suddenly decided they didn't want to support the men and women in ICE. One of them was busy doing a photo shoot with the New York Times while ICE was out there risking their lives. So they came, they said, we want to resign, but we want to use our annual leave up until April, meaning they wanted the taxpayers to pay for them to go on vacation because they decided they didn't want to support law enforcement. So the breaking news tonight, I fired them all. They're fired from the office.
Cool. Tim, I guess when you look at the kind of crumbling of the Justice Department, how it has operated, how the American people view it, what are the long-term impacts and what do you worry about? Because at some point, Pam Bondi will not be Attorney General based on reporting, might be soon. But at some point, she won't be Attorney General. Donald Trump will not be president. But the Department of Justice will still need to operate in this country.
Yeah, Eugene, it's a really good question, right? This has long-term impact as well as short-term. Like the department is hollowing out of mid-level career prosecutors. The bread and butter work in that place is done not by political appointees like Pam Bondi or like U.S. attorneys like I was, but by men and women who transcend administrations, who do the right thing, following the facts and law. And the fact that so many of them are leaving, either being terminated or resigning, has long-term effects. I also fear that the people replacing them, the currency is loyalty over competence. It's who is prepared to support the president's agenda. Again, that's anathema to the tradition of the department. The department is not lawyers for the president. They're lawyers for the people. And if a different standard is being applied to who gets those jobs, that has huge long-term consequence.
David, before we are out of time, I want to get to the Jack Smith of it all, your new law partner. Can you talk a little bit about the thesis of why you all decided to found this firm together, and also give us a little bit of a preview of the former special counsel's testimony this Thursday? He's already appeared for 8 hours behind closed doors. Most of us have read that closed door session. Is this going to be essentially a relitigation of all of the charges that Smith pressed against Donald Trump?
Well, I'll tell you, Jackie, I'm in no position to predict or give you a preview of what might happen in Congress on Thursday. I can tell you that I was proud of the testimony that Jack gave in closed session. And as for the founding of our firm, which I'm super excited about, you actually should start with Tim. This was the glint in Tim's eye that got us all started. But I've known Jack for quite a while. I'm looking forward to working with him again. Actually didn't even meet Tim until this spring. But once I met him and got an idea about what we're going to be doing together, I was super excited about it. So I'll let Tim tell you about the genesis.
Yeah, Tim, what's your elevator pitch?
Yeah, we're not, Jackie, an anti-Trump firm. We're a full-service investigations and litigation firm. I have immense respect for Jack, Dave, and Thomas. I'm really excited about them as my partners. We're going to be here to do things like defending the rule of law, representing people who have been wrongly accused or maligned, but we also aspire to be full-service litigators and investigators. We're open for business in Washington, D.C., and hopeful that a lot of goodwill that we've been hearing over the last week translates into engagements.
one of the things that we have seen as reporters that we've been watching is, especially at the beginning of this administration, is law firms kind of bending the knee and doing the opposite of what their job seems to be when it comes to Donald Trump. And I think when people hear that another firm is popping up, how are you guys thinking about making sure that, you know, first and foremost, you are actually defending the rule of law, no matter who's on the other side?
Yeah, Eugene, our job as lawyers is to defend our clients. We hope we get clients who ask us to help them defend the rule of law, whether that is joining in litigation against executive overreach, representing individuals who have been unfairly terminated or maligned. I think there's a way to do both, right? To be client service oriented, but for clients who are looking for lawyers who are not intimidated or are not afraid to take on this administration. That will be our sweet spot.
Can I add just something?
Real quick, David.
All right, I just wanted to say that a little note of hope here. All four of us have spent our careers working in the Department of Justice, and as lawyers who spend a lot of time in court, we still have a profound core belief and faith in the integrity of the judicial system, both the court system, our federal judges, our state judges, and our juries. And I think the average American citizen, in their heart of hearts, also shares that faith, and that we will get through this moment.
All right, David Harbach, Tim Heaphy, thank you both very much for coming to The Weekend. Good luck with your new firm. Up next, as public outrage over the immigration enforcement surge in Minnesota continues to grow, Democratic lawmakers held a field hearing there to hear directly from witnesses on the ground. One of those lawmakers, Congressman James Walkinshaw, joins us next.